Sox in the basement.
I'm the Sox nerd with my weekly White Sox stumper. Who collected his first big league hit for the Cubs on June 18, 1985, and his last big league hit for the Sox on September 29, 1999? I'll have the answer at the end of my spiel later in the podcast.
The White Sox have lost 3 of their last 4 since last we spoke. They lose 2 out of 3 in Wrigley, split the season series, thank goodness, because those friends of mine that are Cubs fans were insufferable for the first 2 games of that series. So thankfully the Sox won the last game of the series, and then they had a brain fart in the makeup game on Thursday against the Braves. Luckily, did not get no hit. Interesting that it's the veteran on the team in Benintendi who's the guy who gets that hit. My name is Chris Lanuti. Welcome into Sox in the Basement. 30 minutes of Sox for fans by fans. Ed is off for this episode. He will be back on the next one, but we got lots to talk about. I do want to talk about my feelings about that series with the Cubs. It's very telling. First of all, it's telling when you look at the fan base. If you were on social media, you just swept the Tigers. At the time that you went to Detroit, you were in first place with everybody saying, watch this, they won't be in first place when this series is over. And you swept the Tigers, who have now fallen back in the division. The Twins, they swept at the same time you were losing 2 out of 3 from the Cubs, and yet going into Thursday's action, 4 games up. And I don't know how it'll end for the Twins on Thursday, but the Sox in that makeup game, they go out and lose, so that drops them to 3.5 up, only on the Minnesota Twins. And actually, the Twins don't play on the 21st, so on the date that this episode comes out, on August 21st, the White Sox start the day 3.5 games up in their division, with the team chasing them still sitting 2 games under 500. And I keep trying to remind myself of a philosophy that I've talked about on this show for years. When the White Sox were one of those teams that were sitting a couple games out of the wild card or a couple games out of the division lead. And you would sit there and say, if only they could catch fire. But I always said you can't get excited till the team reaches 500. Until a team reaches 500, I can't take them seriously. Now, I understand how close the Twins are, but they are 4 back in the loss column, and you are going to get the opportunity here. I'm sure they're licking their chops at the end of this month and the beginning of September. It's going to be sit the Twins back down, and the Twins are going to be looking at the 6 games they have over the course of 10 days with the White Sox as their one chance of catapulting themselves into the postseason and grabbing the AL Central. So you're going to have to do it again. But I still believe in this team. This episode of Sox in the Basement, and every episode brought to you by Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Switch to a new age of life. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently with stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. Hyatt works with your insurance, has 0% financing for qualified individuals. And Hyatt also has a new online experience. Your destination for home medical equipment and healthcare essentials. They got the latest, greatest in CPAPs. They got continuous glucose monitors. It's something that we've read about that Jordan Hicks uses. Now you can browse through the thousands of trusted products anytime from anywhere with the same local care you rely on. Go to hhme.com. Let's talk about Jordan Hicks. Let's talk about the first game of that series, Sox-Cubs in Wrigley. And you know, I try to put things on social media every once in a while when I have feelings. And it's really interesting. People, they look at a tweet and they think you're one-dimensional in your thinking. And it's why I try my damnedest to not do it, although every once in a while I will put something out there because I think it's a good point. And there's always people that say, well, I mean, if you feel this way, you can't feel the other way. Like, if you feel Will Venable made a mistake in that series, you must think Will Venable's a bad manager. And that just isn't the case. Let's remember what this team was projected to be at the beginning of the year. I mean, every analytical set of data, Every projection method had them well below 500. They had them improving, but well below. When we went on this show, and I said, I think they're going to be 10 games under 500, that's how they're going to finish. That was an outlandish, just insane amount of crazy talk at the time. When I said it, people made fun of it. When I said on this show, I think they're a 10 game under 500 team, I see a big improvement for them. A lot of people thought I was nuts. That was not the standard way of thinking. For this team to be where it is right now, with a bunch of rookies, I don't know if you saw the video. I guess there's some tradition that's been going on this year over at Wrigley Field. My daughter actually found me the reel because she's on social media more than I am and walked in and showed me this. But rookies from opposing teams going to a particular Starbucks in Wrigleyville and getting the orders. Other teams send one or two guys down there. The White Sox sent pretty much all of their team in uniform to go get coffee because they're all rookies. Even Murakami's a rookie, technically. So you have this huge group of guys. Think about what Will Venable is coaching. He's coaching a bunch of rookies. How many times have we seen a big prospect come up here and fall on their face? He's got a bunch of them. And somehow he's created a locker room culture. And somehow he has found a way to convince these guys, hey, when you lose a game, move on. I mean, Pedro Creflo used to always say, we're just going to flush it. But it didn't actually get flushed. It's very hard for a manager to get that kind of a locker room, to cultivate that kind of a culture, and to do it that quickly. He's basically brand new. Most of these guys had never met him before this season started. And he's out there getting them all on the same page. A team that after they lose a game can generally say, okay, and move on to the next game. A team that generally is able to take momentum into the next game. A team that generally seems to have just a good feel. We've heard that college locker room feel described before. Guys are improving. Issues are being addressed. As a manager, I keep saying he's the best manager that I've seen the White Sox have since Ozzie Guillen, who just got his number retired. First manager to have his number retired. Yes, he was a player, but he got his number retired because not only as a player was he beloved by the fan base, but he really gets that number retired because he brings you your first World Series championship in 88 years. And again, it took too long for them to do it. The reason I don't say better than Ozzie Guillen, though, is because of the way that he has managed in game at times. I think you can say he's a really good manager. He's one of the best managers I've seen in my lifetime in a White Sox uniform. And he's got an awful lot of incredible skills when it comes to getting a team on the same page. He's responsible largely for the actual win total compared to what every analytical set of data and every prediction model said that the White Sox were going to be at this point. I have to give the credit to the manager. But I can give credit to the manager and then sit there and say, what is he doing out there sometimes with his rotation, his pitching decisions, and this righty-lefty, lefty-righty matchup stuff? You see, Will Venable is perfect as an analytical manager, I think. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been thinking about the movie Moneyball. And I'm going to go with the movie and not the book because they're different. And I'm going to go with the movie and not real life because not everybody knows the story of real life. Not everybody read the book. Most people have seen the movie. But if you've seen the movie with Brad Pitt, Billy Beane goes to Art Howe and says, we're going to play baseball a different way. And we're going to play with the data. And we're going to go with what the overall data says we should do. And Art Howe is a gut type manager. He manages with his gut. He's a baseball man. And that's one of the big conflicts. Will Venable would be perfect for Billy Beane. If Billy Beane went to Will Venable and said, look, Billy, if Billy said, look, Will, left-handed pitchers tend to do better across all of baseball against left-handed batters. And left-handed batters have a hard time with left-handed pitchers. So every time you're in a big moment, go lefty-lefty. And the same with righties. Go bring in a righty against a righty. Because across the board, all this data says so. Will Venable would do it immediately and agree with him on it. And in a lot of ways, it works. But my issue with the first game of that series is the best hitter in baseball, arguably, at least in the National League. A guy of which I keep seeing poll after poll after poll. Who will win the NL MVP? Pete Crow Armstrong or Shohei Ohtani? That guy comes up to the plate. And you go, well, I can just neutralize him with picking a pitcher that pitches from the side that is harder for Pete Crow Armstrong. That's what I'm going to do. And while that may work with your average baseball player, the reason superstars are superstars, the reason the greats are the greats, is that you cannot neutralize them with those simple sabermetric ideals. They'll find a way. That's like saying I could neutralize Babe Ruth if we just threw lefties against him. I can neutralize Aaron Judge if I just send righties against him. And the weirdest thing about the decision-making process is that Will Venable had first base open in the 10th inning, and he could have taken arguably the MVP of the National League and taken him out of the equation and put him on first. There's a runner in scoring position. It's the only run that matters. He could have moved him over to first base, and he chose not to. And his explanation was he didn't want to pitch to Seiya Suzuki. Well, here's the deal. You would either have to walk Seiya Suzuki with one out if this would have worked out, or you would have had to pitch to Seiya Suzuki with a guy still sitting at second base. But you are going to have to deal with Seiya Suzuki one way or another. And what you're saying is we fear Seiya Suzuki more than we fear Pete Crow Armstrong. And you had a righty available in the pen, and instead you sent out a rookie pitcher who'd never been in that situation before. And I'm not the only one who said that. Steve Stone said it the next day, that he found it odd to put a rookie pitcher who's never been in that situation before, who's only really been a starter, and has never been in that kind of a moment, in that kind of an atmosphere, to put him out there against, again, a guy who could be the National League MVP. And the other weird thing is you had a left-handed pitcher that you were saving for game 2 as your opener. And why were you saving him for game 2 as your opener? Because you believe you can throw any left-handed pitcher out there and neutralize PCA. So after PCA hits the walk-off home run in game 1, now game 2, you kick it off with a left-handed opener. And he hits a home run in his first at-bat. The philosophy doesn't work with everybody. You can't be cookie cutter. And if there's anything I want Will Venable to do in his young managerial career, because trust me, he is a perfect bench coach. He sat there in Texas, and Bruce Bochy probably loved him, because when he's sitting there during the game, he goes, you know what? We should go with the righty. You know what? We should go with the lefty. You know what? We should platoon this guy. You know what? This guy, according to the analytics, would do this, and that's perfect. But then there was a guy who was a multiple-time World Series winning manager who probably didn't take the advice every time, who probably said, well, wait a minute. This is a guy that could win the MVP. I would like to put him on first and move on. Wait a minute, the opener philosophy isn't going to work against this guy because he's not your average ball player. And I think that now as a manager with nobody to filter that analytical information, you have to hope that Will Venable figures out how to make the gut call every once in a while, how to understand that, yes, across the board, this is how the numbers work, but sometimes it doesn't work that way in real life. And in certain moments, you may have to, I don't know, do what Ozzie Guillen did in 2005 in Game 3. Go grab Jeff Blum and send him out there in extra innings, not because he was the best matchup, not because he'd been hitting the ball well, but because he was going up against his former team and he looked hitterish. Sometimes you got to go in that direction. You just have to, he just needs to evolve as a manager just a little bit and start to have that other little voice. And I don't know if that can be taught, but that's the thing I think to watch moving forward with what I said at the very beginning is a very good, very influential manager over his players who has gotten them at least to where they are now. For exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest. No high pressure sales. They're not in your kitchen. You're in their showroom. They're not in your living room with their feet on your couch like it's a Dave Chappelle skit. Instead, you are there speaking with an owner. There's always one in the showroom. There's one on site, too, during the install. They never farm out the work. It's their own employees. A lot of places do that. That way, they get you the right thing. They make sure you know what you're getting. There's somebody overseeing their own employees, and there's no shrugging like, well, that's not really my problem at the end of it, right? No, it's done right. They've been doing it that way in Oak Forest since 1985 with all major brands custom made and no stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is a half block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. This weekend should be a nice weekend to head out there and maybe go look at some windows or some doors if you're getting ready for the fall and the winter. If you're like me, you can have the top down on your Jeep. That's why if you're watching on the YouTube channel, I've got that old man hair, right? Like the Robert Redford when he got older hair, even though I'm not as good looking as Robert Redford, but where it just blows in the wind because I've had the top down on the Jeep all day today. And it's like it just goes wherever the heck it wants to because it's getting old up there. Luckily, it's still there, but that's kind of how I feel today. But I'm not putting the top back on. It's too nice outside. All right, let's take a look at some listener mail real quick. We'll start with this one. Oh gosh, it's kind of along the same way. We might as well get to it. Jake wrote at soxinthebasement.com, and then I don't want to be on Will Venable the entire time because again, overall, the idea that they win the third game of the series is because he's got the right culture in the locker room where they can shake it off. Where in that kind of a crowd, in that kind of an atmosphere with that kind of noise, and the pressure of we could get swept out of Wrigley, they go out and take care of business in Game 3. Hey guys, long-time listener, first time writing in. Just wanted to say I love the show. It's been a great companion for this White Sox season, good and bad. I will give Will Venable his flowers for taking this team from the worst franchise in history to first place in the AL Central. That said, it's getting harder to ignore some shaky bullpen management down the stretch. Last week against Boston, the White Sox blew multiple extra inning leads with Trevor Richards as the only man left to turn to, a rough spot to be in, but also a signal of how the arms got used earlier in that game. Then against the Cubs, no bunt with Rogers up in a key ninth inning spot, riding Hicks for the 8th and the 9th, and pitching the PCA on a 2-0 count with first base open. Add in the mound visit rule blunder from last week that cost them length from a starter, and you start to wonder about the pattern. So I'm curious, do you see Venable as a long-term answer here who will learn right alongside these guys, or is his in-game management ultimately going to be the ceiling on this team? Aloha and F. Jerry. Love how he signed it. Listen, I think that's the point I was trying to get to. He needs to evolve. Like the Will Venable that we're seeing now can't be the finished product. But then again, the Brady Montgomery I'm seeing now can't be the finished product, right? The Colson Montgomery that I'm seeing now can't be the finished product, correct? Like there are other players on this team, they can't be finished now. He can't be finished either. Because you're right, he has to learn from his mistakes. One of the most frustrating things that I deal with in my life, and I'm sure a lot of you can empathize with this, but I come into a contact with a lot of people. Doing radio, running your own business, doing the podcasting network, working 911 and dealing with the public for 10 years, everything. Relationships, I'm dating now, which is, I could do 20 podcasts on what that's like. And I would have stories galore for you. But I mean, you come into contact with so many different people. And one of my biggest pet peeves are people that are, I am what I am, and that's what I am. I can't be changed, right? They do bad behavior, but it's not their fault, it's somebody else's. They're unable to evolve. If you're not constantly learning, growing in every way throughout your entire life until the end of it, you're failing. You should not be the same person you were when you were 20, when you're 30. You should not be the same person when you're 40 as when you were 30, and so on and so on and so on. And a manager should evolve as well. Just like a player needs to get better, a manager needs to get better. He is learning here on the job in a season where you never expected him to be in a pennant race. And there are times where I've said, hey, you know what? At least he's got the quick hook here. At least he's saying it's time to make a move. But Craig Counsell did the thing that I've been warning us all about all year long. Craig Counsell kept switching his pitchers from a righty starter to a lefty reliever back to a righty starter, and he waited for Venable to use all of his platoons. And then in late innings, he went back to the original arm side of the mound. And now you got guys coming up that are already overmatched, and they don't have the right guy up there, the right pitcher. And they need to come back or they need to score a run to win. And I've said that when he runs against veteran managers and they know, hey, if I start a righty, and I switch to a lefty middle relief pitcher in the 5th or 6th inning, he's going to empty his platoon bench. But then when I switch back, he's got the wrong lineup at the end of the game. And Craig Counsell did that to him over those 3 days. He did that to him. And I'm not saying he's wrong with it. He has built some players with this. I saw some statistic the other day where if you take the platoon of Benintendi and Grichuk and you look at the numbers of the player that's created, if you make that a platoon, they made a Bryce Harper at the plate doing that. You see, it goes back to what I just talked about. What was the Billy Beane method in the movie? If you've seen the movie or if you read the book, it's really in there too. The Billy Beane method was, look, we can't keep up. We don't have the money. We have to create players in the aggregate. So we're going to do it this way by playing this game with the sabermetrics. And what it did was, it doesn't work at first because the manager's not using it the right way. Now the manager starts doing it the right way. They go on this huge winning streak. The law of averages over 162, you will have great success with that. With that method over a huge sample size, you will have great success. In short series, in playoff series though, it never worked for the A's. Because in short series, there's not enough games for the law of averages to work itself out. Plus, other teams now can sit there and react to what you're doing and change their managerial style, can go to the bullpen a little earlier in certain games, can say, well, this is their pattern. This is how we'll fight their pattern. Just like a hitter gets to the major leagues and has great success, and then pitchers adjust to that hitter. And we always say, well, now the hitter has to readjust because the league figured them out. Will Venable has to readjust. And I don't know. He may have greater success with better personnel. If this isn't a $100 million payroll, which it still isn't, but it's a $200 million payroll, and the talent level's bigger, and he's using this philosophy, maybe he gets greater results. And I think that over 162, the White Sox will win more games than they lose using this method. But I think in short series, I think when going up against teams that are like, we're going to put our all into this and we're going to manage it like the playoffs, I become concerned. And I don't know how it'll go in the postseason this year. So look, I believe this team is good and I believe anything can happen in the postseason. But I do believe, Jake, that if he doesn't evolve and start to pick up some of the managerial things that guys like Bobby Cox to Ozzie Guillen to anybody else that's from that school of baseball is able to figure out. That yes, the analytics work to an extent, but at times you have to think ahead like a chess player. If I move this piece, he's going to move his queen over here. That's something he needs to adjust to. And I don't think it's impossible for him to adjust to it. He seems like a very intelligent guy, right? But then when you heard his explanation about what he did in game one, you go, did he not understand what the chess moves were that were coming after? He's got to work on that just a little bit. I got another listener email here that I definitely want to get to. Before I get to it, though, and then we're going to get to the Sox nerd. Real quick, Moose Vinyl. An application for record collectors to manage their record collections, buy and sell them. That's an evolving thing. Just like a manager has to evolve and a player has to evolve. That's an evolving thing. You have record collectors, then somebody came up with an app, then somebody else came up with another app, and the whole idea was to keep track of your collection. And then Moose Vinyl said, nope, we're going to be the best at it. We're going to have the best user interface you can find. We're going to set it up so you can actually move the files and what you were doing on another app, and you can move the CSV files over from their platform to ours, so you don't have to start over. You can just change your app to the better one. And you can get it right now on iPhone. It'll be on Android soon. And they also have a great record store, really fun to go hang out in if you ever get an opportunity to. First of all, the Lamont downtown area is just a cool place, great restaurants, just so many things to do, little shops. It's good for, going down there individually, going down there with families, bringing the kids, just going down there with your wife or your girlfriend or your husband or your boyfriend. There's something to do there. But get down there to Moose Vinyl, 238 Main Street, selling turntables and vintage audio equipment at discount through July. And they use, actually, I think that's continued. It's an old read. I think they're still doing that. And they use the actual app. So if they don't have what you're looking for, they get it for you quicker than anybody and more conveniently. Check it out again. Moose Vinyl available on your iPhone. Okay, other listener email here that I want to make sure I got to because I feel like the answer was already kind of given the other day, but I want to give Steve his opportunity. Steve Rosenbaum sends me a message. Chris, we're told the White Sox have a great coaching staff. If so, why does Braden Montgomery continue to catch the ball with one hand, held high on the left side when runners are on base? It takes Montgomery forever to grasp the ball and make the throw. He also never circles the ball to get his body in a position to launch a good throw. Teams scout this and know he cannot throw out runners advancing to third or heading home. If this deficiency is not corrected in his rookie season, it is unlikely it will ever be. All the best and truly enjoy you and Ed on Sox in the Basement, Steve. Steve, I get it. He's young and there are probably things that have to be corrected. I also watched him gun down one of the faster runners on the Chicago Cubs, trying to advance from second to third with a beanie of a throw. And I want to say it was a week or so ago, I was complaining that he had made a laser throw from the warning track that hits Chase Mydroth, who continues to impress. I mentioned this on the last show. God, that diving throw that he had. SportsCenter had that throw where he dives almost behind second base, gets up and makes that play in a high-pressure situation. It's like the sixth best play of the day. Those people are idiots. Because I saw the plays that came afterwards, maybe one or two better than that. It was an insane play by Chase Mydroth. But he immediately makes a turn and goes home after the Montgomery throw from the track. And I remember I was lamenting that if Edgar Carroll could catch, that runner was done at home. He has some really good skill, and I think White Sox fans are getting excited because you're finally seeing a right fielder who can field his position. He may not technically be doing everything exactly the way that you would do in a textbook. So it'll be interesting to see if they change any of it, because if you could improve on what he's doing right now, he'll be otherworldly. So again, it's something to watch. I mean, I was looking at his numbers too the other day. I was astounded by his numbers because it feels like he's always coming up big. Through 59 games and 214 official at-bats, he has 51 hits. He's hitting 238. He's getting on a 328 clip. He's only slugging 374, so it's only a 702 OPS. But it's astounding. He already has 30 RBI. And he has not been here for that long. His 30 RBI have him 8th on the team. And some of the guys above him, Antonacci, Peters, Mydroth, Benintendi, Colson Montgomery, Miguel Vargas, double, if not more of the games than he's played in. He seems to come up big when there's guys on base. He seems to get pretty big base hits, and he seems to not be playing in fear. So I think my overall take on a Braden Montgomery is, for a young player joining a team in a pennant race, he's not wilting under the pressure. Hopefully, if he's not doing things technically out in right field as well as he should, they will, of course, address that. On the other hand, he seems to have so much natural talent that he's still able to make some big plays from time to time. That's something to watch. It's something I didn't notice. I gotta admit to you, I didn't notice that issue because he's been playing so well, and his defense has been great. Let's get to the Sox Nerd. That music means the Sox Nerd. Dave Marin is on the line right now to give you all the trivia and tidbits and nuggets that he gets on the scoreboard at the rate for each and every home game, and then some bonus stuff that you only hear here on Sox in the Basement. It's all brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore. I was just describing that village to you. It's a great place to go hang out, see everything they have going on this weekend and beyond at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for us?
What flashed through your mind when Andrew Benintendi launched his go-ahead pinch hit home run at Wrigley Field on Monday? Was it AJ's go-ahead shot in the ninth in 2006 that sparked a garbage-throwing tantrum from the bleacher bums? Or was it Mike Caruso's game-winning dinger into the soggy right field stands in 1999? Or was it Eloy's 2019 round tripper that prompted a euphoric "Thanks, Cubs" from Benetti? Memories certainly do light the corners of our minds, don't they? A few innings later, I'm sure different memories were flashing through your minds as baseball once again had the last laugh with the humiliating kick in the crotch. Alas, we forge on with nuggets. There are always nuggets. That clutch bomb elevated Benintendi's slugging percentage at that moment in time to 1,100 at Wrigley Field, which made him the all-time leader among players with at least 20 at-bats there. After getting one hit in his final 7 at-bats, Benny ended the series with a .444, .484, and .852 slash line at the ivy-covered burial ground. Still, his .852 slugging percentage is third all-time, his average is fifth, and his OBP is seventh for players with at least 27 at-bats at Elwood Blues' falsified address. Jose Urquidy really saved the day on Wednesday, didn't he? The right-hander fanned 8 and 6 shutout innings of relief as the Sox salvaged the final in the Cubs series. The 8 strikeouts are tied for the 8th highest output ever by a Sox reliever and the most by a Sox reliever against the Cubs. Urquidy broke the Sox strikeout relief mark at Wrigley Field that was set the previous night by Eric Fetty, who whiffed 5 in 4 2/3 innings. What can I tell you about new catcher Jake Rogers? Well, he is the third White Sox backstop to wear the number 28. The others were Joe Ginsberg in 1960 and 61 and Eddie Malone in 1949 and 1950. Jake knows good pitching. He caught every start of unanimous Cy Young winner Tarek Skubal in 2024. In his career, Skubal threw to Rogers 60 times with a 2.95 ERA while limiting foes to a 2.13 average. A few words on Tommy John, the trailblazing pitcher who passed away on August 15th at the age of 83. Before he was the subject of a pioneering arm surgery, John was an excellent hurler for the Sox. The lefty won 82 games with a 2.95 ERA and 237 contests for the Sox between 1965 and 1971. The Terre Haute native is the Sox all-time leader among Indiana natives in wins, and his 288 career victories are a record for Hoosier State hurlers. John's best years were 1966 and 1967 when he led the American League in shutouts, and 1968 when he toted a 1.98 ERA and represented the Sox in the first indoor All-Star game in Houston. John's Sox career ended when he was dealt with Steve Hunts to the Dodgers for Dick Allen on December 2nd, 1971, in the most consequential trade in the 126-year history of the Chicago American League Ball Club. In an interview I did with Roland Heeman, who was GM in 1971, he said the Dodgers originally wanted Terry Forster instead of John, but the Sox wouldn't part with Forster because they thought he was going to be another Koufax. Fun facts? Sox rep Ed Farmer relieved John at the 1980 All-Star Game in Los Angeles. The starting pitcher for the AL in that game was Steve Stone. Also, John absorbed a beating from the 1983 Sox when he surrendered consecutive first-inning homers to Fisk, Paciorek, and Luzinski as the Hitmen whipped the Angels 11-0 on September 9th. Before I get to my stumper answer and zinger, I remind you gems like these and more can be found on my WordPress blog, which you can find at soxinthebasement.com. I'm also on X, Threads, Facebook, and Instagram. My stumper answer? It was Darren Jackson who notched his first MLB hit for the Cubs in 1985 and his last MLB hit for the Sox in 1999. My zinger? Didn't it seem off to you that Munetaka Murakami's homer on Tuesday at Wrigley Field that hit the scoreboard was originally measured at 404 feet? Well, it was off. Way off. On Wednesday, the missile was updated to 440 feet. It was his second longest bomb of the season behind the 451-foot blast he had in Arizona on April 22nd. That's it, guys. Probably more than you wanted to know about the crosstown rivalry and pre-bionic Tommy John.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.